The coffee shop was buzzing, but not overwhelmingly so. It was the kind of place where conversations hummed, softly like a well-tuned orchestra. In the corner near the window sat a man who seemed both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Elon Musk, yes, the Elon Musk, sipping a latte, his eyes scanning through something on his phone. Across the room, a young girl, no older than 16, sat with a sketchbook. Her pencil moved quickly, but her eyes darted up every few seconds. She couldn't believe it. Elon Musk. The man behind Tesla and SpaceX was just a few feet away. She had admired him for years, not just for his brilliance, but for the way he always seemed to be looking at the world differently. But now she was frozen. Should she approach him? What would she say? What if he brushed her off or didn't have time? Her mind raced. She'd always dreamed of asking him a question that had been haunting her, something bigger than rockets or electric cars. It was a question about life, something she'd wrestled with quietly in her room at night. Staring at the ceiling, minutes ticked by. Elon continued with his latte, seemingly oblivious to her presence. The girl's heart pounded. Her mother always said, opportunities don't wait. If you want something, you have to go after it. But this was Elon Musk. What if she messed it up? Finally, she took a deep breath, clutching her sketchbook like a shield. Her sneakers squeaked softly against the floor as she made her way to his table. Elon glanced up, his expression neutral but polite. Hi, Mr. Musk? She began, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, setting his phone down. Yes? I'm sorry to bother you, she said, words tumbling out nervously. I've always admired your work, and I have this question. It's not about rockets or anything like that. It's more personal. Elon tilted his head slightly, intrigued. Go on, he said, gesturing for her to sit. The girl hesitated, then slid into the chair across from him. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it, the chance to ask the question she'd been holding on to for so long. For a moment, the girl sat silently, gathering her thoughts. Elon waited patiently, his gaze steady but not intimidating. Finally, she blurted out, Do you ever think about what happens after we die? Like, is there a God, or is it just nothing? Elon blinked, clearly not expecting such a profound question from a stranger, let alone a teenager. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. That's a heavy question, he said with a faint smile. I know, the girl said quickly. It's just, I've been thinking about it a lot, and you're like one of the smartest people in the world. So I thought maybe you'd have an answer. Elon chuckled softly. Well, I wouldn't say I have the answer, but I can tell you what I think. He paused, choosing his words carefully. As a scientist, I tend to look at things through the lens of evidence and logic. We know a lot about the physical universe, how it works, what it's made of. But when it comes to questions like life after death or the existence of God, science doesn't give us much to work with. It's inconclusive. The girl frowned, not entirely satisfied. So you don't believe in God? Elon hesitated. It's not that simple. I think there's a lot we don't understand about the universe. It's vast, mysterious, and beautiful in ways that are hard to explain. Some people find God in that mystery. Others find it in relationships or purpose. For me, I focus on what I can do here and now, how I can contribute to humanity's progress. The girl nodded slowly, but her eyes were still searching. That's logical, she said. But what about you? Personally, have you ever felt like there's something bigger, something you can't explain? Elon's expression softened. He wasn't used to being asked such personal questions, especially by a stranger. He took a deep breath. There have been moments, he admitted, times when I've looked at the stars or held my children and felt something profound. It's hard to put into words, but I think those moments are what make life meaningful, whether or not there's something beyond it. The girl leaned forward, her brow furrowed. But isn't it scary? Not knowing? Elon smiled faintly. It can be. But I've learned to focus on the questions themselves, not just the answers. Sometimes the act of searching is what matters most. The girl tilted her head, her curiosity sharpening. You've done so much for science, things that most people couldn't even dream of. But science doesn't answer everything, does it? Like, why we're here. Elon leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. That's true. Science is incredible for explaining the how, how the universe works, how life evolved, how energy transforms. But the why, that's a different story. Science doesn't deal with purpose. It deals with process. The girl's pencil twirled absent-mindedly in her fingers. So where do you think purpose comes from? Is it just something we make up to feel better? Elon's eyes narrowed slightly, not out of frustration, but as if he were considering her question deeply. I don't think it's as simple as making it up. Humans have an innate drive to find meaning. It's hardwired into us. We look at the stars and wonder, why are we here? It's the same instinct that drives us to build, create, and explore. Purpose might not be something that exists out there, waiting to be discovered. It might be something we create within ourselves. The girl nodded but still looked unsure. But doesn't that feel empty? Like if we're just inventing it, then it's not real. Elon smiled faintly. Not necessarily. Think about art or music. They're not real in the same way gravity or atoms are. But does that make them any less meaningful? Purpose is like that. It's something we feel, something that drives us. Even if it's not a tangible object. The girl frowned slightly. But isn't it frustrating? To know that no matter how much science explains, there are still things we can never understand. Elon's expression softened. It used to frustrate me, he admitted. When I was younger, I wanted to know everything, to unlock all the secrets of the universe. But the more I learned, the more I realized how vast and unknowable it all is. Now I see it differently. The mystery itself is part of the beauty. If we knew everything, there'd be nothing left to discover. The girl was quiet for a moment, letting his words sink in. Then she asked, do you think that's where faith comes in? To fill in the gaps where science can't? Elon hesitated. Faith means different things to different people. For some, it's belief in a higher power. For others, it's trust in humanity or in the future. I think faith, whatever form it takes, can be a powerful tool. It helps people find hope and meaning, especially when the answers aren't clear. She leaned forward. But do you have faith? In anything? Elon's gaze turned distant, as if he were looking past the room and into some deeper place. I have faith in potential, he said finally. In what humanity can achieve. In our ability to overcome challenges and create a better future. It's not faith in the traditional sense, but it's what keeps me going. The girl scribbled something in her notebook, then looked up. Do you ever feel like that's not enough? That maybe there's something more? Elon's lips twitched into a faint smile. Sometimes. And that's okay. Life isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. The girl tapped her pencil against the notebook, her mind swirling with thoughts. Finally, she asked, what about the meaning of life? Isn't that the ultimate question? Why we're here, what we're supposed to do? Elon chuckled softly. It's definitely the big one, he said. And I don't think there's a single answer. For me, it's about advancing humanity, pushing boundaries, solving problems, creating a future where people can thrive. That's what gives my life meaning. The girl tilted her head. But what about smaller things? Like being kind to people or spending time with your family? Isn't that part of it too? Elon nodded slowly. You're right. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture and forget about the little things. But those moments, sharing a laugh, helping someone, being present with the people you care about, they're just as important. Maybe even more so. The girl's eyes brightened. So you think life's purpose is a mix of both? Big goals and small moments? Elon smiled. Exactly. The big goals give us direction. The small moments give us meaning. She scribbled furiously in her notebook, then looked up. But what about people who feel lost? Who don't have big goals or meaningful moments? What do they do? Elon's expression grew thoughtful. I think everyone feels lost at some point. It's part of being human. The key is to keep moving. Even if you're not sure where you're going. Try new things, meet new people, ask new questions. Purpose doesn't always come to you. You have to go looking for it. The girl nodded slowly, her mind turning over his words. So it's okay not to have it all figured out? Elon smiled. More than okay. It's normal. Life isn't a straight line, it's a maze. And sometimes getting lost is how you find your way. The girl sat quietly for a moment, as if trying to digest everything they had just talked about. She had asked Elon some of the biggest questions anyone could ask, and yet somehow, it seemed like the answers were less about certainty and more about letting go. Do you ever wish you had all the answers? She asked, her voice soft and hesitant. Elon leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming lightly on the edge of his coffee cup. I used to, he said, his gaze distant, almost introspective. When I was younger, I thought if I could just figure everything out, if I could find the one answer to life's big questions, then everything would fall into place. But the more I learned, the more I realized how much I don't know. And that's okay. There's a freedom in accepting the uncertainty. The girl looked at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. But isn't it scary, not knowing? He smiled, but it wasn't the usual confident smile he was known for. It was a more vulnerable one, almost thoughtful. Yeah, it can be terrifying. The unknown is one of the scariest things for any human being, but it's also where growth happens. It's where we take risks, try new things, and learn about ourselves. She shifted in her seat, a little unsure of what to make of his words. So you think uncertainty is a good thing? Yes, I do, Elon said, his voice steady now. The unknown forces us to move forward, to push boundaries, to take that next step, even when we're not sure what's on the other side. When everything is certain, there's no room for change, no room for progress. The girl absorbed his words slowly. She had spent so much time trying to find the right answers, to grasp at certainty, and yet now, here was Elon Musk, someone who had achieved incredible things, telling her that maybe the most important thing was learning to be okay with the unknown. But how do you stay calm when everything feels uncertain? She asked, her voice betraying a slight tremor. How do you keep going when you don't know what's going to happen next? Elon paused for a moment, his eyes searching her face as if he were deciding how to answer. You don't have to stay calm all the time, he said finally. It's okay to feel anxious, to question things, to feel lost. That's part of the process. The key is to keep going, to keep asking those questions, even when you don't have all the answers. Growth doesn't happen when you have it all figured out. It happens when you're in the mess of uncertainty, learning as you go. The girl thought about this. It wasn't what she had expected, but it made sense. Maybe all the answers didn't need to be found in one sitting. Maybe it was okay to not know everything right now. So, what's the point then? She asked, the words tumbling out before she could stop herself. If we can't know everything, and if we can't control everything, what are we supposed to do? Elon's eyes softened and he leaned forward slightly. You're supposed to live, to experience, to embrace the questions, the doubts, and the journey. It's not about having all the answers. It's about the process of figuring it out one step at a time. She sat there for a moment, contemplating his words. Her mind, which had been full of doubt and questions, now felt a little lighter. Maybe it was okay to not know. Maybe the journey itself was what mattered most. And what about failure? She asked, her voice quiet. How do you deal with that? When things don't go the way you want? Elon let out a soft laugh. Failure is part of it. In fact, I think failure is one of the best teachers. I've failed more times than I can count, but every failure taught me something, pushed me to think differently, to adapt, to try again, and every time I came out stronger. The girl smiled softly, the weight on her chest lifting just a little. That's comforting, she said. It's nice to know that even the people who seem to have it all together don't always have it all figured out. Elon nodded. Exactly. No one does. We're all just trying to make sense of it, one step at a time. As the conversation continued, the girl began to feel a shift within herself. What had started as a question for someone she admired, someone she thought had all the answers, had turned into something far more personal. She had come in expecting a great revelation, a single piece of advice that would set her life on a new course. Instead, she found herself reflecting on everything she thought she knew about purpose, uncertainty, and what it meant to truly live. Elon sat back, his gaze still thoughtful, but now there was a sense of openness in his eyes. You know, when you asked me about life's meaning, I didn't expect to be the one learning something, he said with a slight chuckle. But I think you've helped me see something I hadn't considered in a while. The girl raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? He took a deep breath. You've reminded me of something important, that we're all just figuring this out. It's easy to get caught up in the big goals, the huge projects, and the future we want to build. But the small moments, the ones where we connect with others, where we share our vulnerabilities, those are what make life truly meaningful. The girl smiled, feeling a sense of warmth spread through her chest. I think I understand now, she said softly, that it's not about having all the answers. It's about being okay with not knowing, and trusting that everything will make sense in time. Elon nodded slowly. Exactly. Sometimes the questions are more important than the answers. They push us forward, make us think, challenge us. And as long as we keep asking, we're on the right path. The girl paused, considering one last question. Do you think that maybe this is the key to everything? To not having all the answers, but to keep going anyway. Elon's expression grew more serious. Yes, I think that's the key. Embracing the unknown, learning from it, and using it to grow. The journey isn't about finding the perfect answer. It's about asking the right questions along the way. As the conversation wound down, the girl realized she had gained something far more valuable than a simple piece of advice. She had gained a new perspective, a way of thinking about life, uncertainty, and growth that would stay with her forever. As she stood to leave, she turned to Elon one last time. Thank you, she said, her voice full of gratitude. This conversation has meant more to me than you'll ever know. Elon looked up at her with a smile, a quiet understanding in his eyes. You're welcome. Just remember, the answers will come, but don't forget to enjoy the journey while you're figuring it out. And with that, the girl left the coffee shop, feeling a sense of peace and possibility she hadn't felt before. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales and life-changing conversations.